So the first semester of my freshman year, I scored a resounding at a pitiful school. I scored an embarrassing 1-4.
A 1 in 4.
Yeah. Yeah, I failed typing even. It was like...
Did you really?
It was a nosedive.
You're a writer.
I can write, but I can't type.
Not one other kid in this neighborhood does chores. You're gonna get in trouble, Murtaugh.
Hey, Ma! Can we get some meatloaf?
He started it.
Mom!
What?
Shut up!
What is the matter with you?
I know it's a school night, so we're just gonna get right down to it.
Good morning. This is Harry H. Harrison Jr., and welcome to another fantastic edition of Fearless Parenting. Today is going to be a super show because we have with us Christine Gaincarz, who is a retired college professor and a retired high school teacher. And we're going to be talking about primarily my book, 1001 Things Every College Student Needs to Know. And the reason we're talking about this book to Christine is that she taught this book at her at the high school she was teaching, the private school, the college prep school she was teaching in, and found it very useful. Plus, she has experience with kids showing up to college absolutely not ready for college. So that's where we're going to start with this show. Is that, Christine, can you give us a little of your background on how what we were talking about the program that you designed with Kurt, how you recognized that so many college kids were not ready for college, but they could be.
A colleague and I wrote this program for the university, and we taught summer school and found that really these kids were conditional. And we found that they were so unprepared, and they were really good students. They tried hard. They would come in for help, and they failed 100% across the board, year after year. These were the conditional students at this university admitted on a conditional basis.
So that means they were accepted with condition.
Yes, if they made their grades.
If they made their grades in the summer school.
Right. And so we wrote a program to eliminate that problem.
So before you guys got involved, what was how many kids would show up for the conditional?
I don't know.
Maybe let's say 100.
Yeah, I have no idea. We had a limit of, what was our limit? I believe about 20 or 30. That was all we would take in the summer.
And then it was, y'all weren't the teachers in the beginning. I mean,
I was.
You were?
Yes.
Okay.
I always taught one of the classes.
And you noticed that the kids, they would come in, they were smart, but not college prepared.
These were before we wrote the program? Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of the summer, were they still failing? I mean, were they still not acceptable to the college?
Correct. They failed out at 100%.
Wow. Okay.
That's why we wrote the program.
Okay. And what led you to think that they could be, just you could turn this around?
Talking to them.
All right.
For example, I might, somebody would come in to me and say, I've never studied so hard for a test in my life. And I would say, bring in everything I'll have your exam. I want you to bring me your book, any study materials, everything that you use to study. And I'd ask them how long they studied, when they started, and I would lay out all of what they've read, their flashcards, whatever they did, and invariably I could pinpoint what their problem was. Some questions they said they danced all around the answer. They knew the answer, they just could not get to it. Sometimes their tendency is to highlight everything in the book, and if you highlight everything, then you've highlighted nothing.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And so they don't know how to highlight. They don't
no
know
study skills.
Yeah, they can't extract the main idea out of a paragraph. But I could show that to them just by laying out their test. By taking one or two questions, I could go through and I could tell them exactly what the problem was.
So the significance of this discussion is that this year, 2.2 million kids will start their freshman year, and 1 million will drop out. Not because of money. It will drop out because they simply can't handle the caseload. And then out of that 1.2 million kids that stay, a full third of them will graduate, or a third of them will leave in 4 years with absolutely no improvement in cognitive reasoning, critical thinking, or written communication.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the reason I wrote this book, 1001 Things Every College Student Needs to Know. And they need to know a lot of things. So when you were teaching, so you prepared this program, this for the university, and you and another professor presented it, and they took you up on it.
Mm-hmm.
and your mission was to train these conditional kids to be accepted into college.
Train them to be successful in college.
Okay, so it wasn't just to start their freshman year, but to graduate.
Yes.
Okay. And what was your success rate with these kids?
Now it's been a lot of years, but I am thinking the success rate was near 90%. I actually think it was a little higher, but I'm not going to say that because I can't really remember.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That's better than the universities.
Yes.
Because we know a full half of them are leaving.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So was there some particular things that so we have parents listening and they're going to want to know, well, is my son or daughter ready for college?
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell them, here's what you need to look for to make sure they're ready? Or if they can't do this, they're not ready.
Tell the parents
Yeah,
what
tell
to
the
look
parents.
for.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, like in terms of their kids may not have been studying, okay? So they may have gone through their entire high school year. Maybe they're smart enough not to pick up a book, but they're about to walk into a university that's going to call BS on that.
This is a problem. The first thing the students need to know is that you really do need to buy your book. I've had students come to me and say, I have to buy the book after failing the first test.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Big news.
Mm-hmm.
So
Big news.
And then you need to know to go to class.
see, that seems like so simple.
Uh-huh.
That seems like so simple. But how many kids don't go to class? It's like the secret to graduation. Okay, buy your book before exams start, like it says on the cover here. Go to class. Going to class is like, what happens? What does a professor think when an 18-year-old girl just doesn't show up for class for 2 or 3 weeks in a row?
I don't take roll, but I know who's there.
Right.
Wait,
Yeah.
do you really not take roll?
No, my classes are 100, 200 people.
Well,
and I teach an intro class.
No, that was
probably in a professor's mind, like, why should they care?
right. No,
It's not their degree, right?
Yeah, no,
mean-
I agree. That was something that always interested me in college because there were professors who just didn't, and I kind of respect that. Yeah, I'm like, it's your job to come here. Yeah, like you can either show up or not.
I
get
mean,
behind that.
it's
Yeah.
not the professor's responsibility if the student
Absolutely.
shows up to class. Why should they care if they care or not?
There are professors that will give extra credit for students who come to class. My thing
makes
is
no
that
Not at
my
all.
thing is, do you get paid extra when you show up
To
to a
work,
job?
yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
So
That's like getting overtime pay for showing up during your normal office hours.
And it's kind of a breakthrough thing for kids to go, I go to class. When my son was at TCU, his roommate couldn't get out of bed the first 3 or 4 weeks. He never went to class. And he just kind of thought he could read his way through it. And, there were exams he missed. There were some pretty important things in
Yeah.
class that he started like way behind. Like, and he had
First, you have to learn how to wake up.
that's that's the thing about going to college is that you have to take on a responsibility. And did y'all deal with like personal responsibility when you were designing this program for your college kids?
we didn't really deal with it, but that is a huge problem. Huge problem.
Is that kids just? I mean, they don't know to wake up. They don't have they have not developed a personal ethic of waking up at 7 o'clock, struggling eating something, struggling to class, going to the next class, studying between the classes, buying the books,
Yeah.
staying on top of the study, and starting the term papers early. They just don't have that. A lot of them, I don't want to generalize, a lot of them don't have that discipline, which is why they don't graduate.
We spent a lot of time, I did both in high school and in college, on time management. Time management is huge. It is huge because they don't realize when they have 4 syllabi that you may have 15 exams that in 12 weeks, 12 to 14 weeks. And on top of that, 5 papers and a quiz every week. And, it just goes on and on. And even when they're careful and lay out their time, which is what we taught them on a calendar by working backwards, if you will, they something happens, like the roommate gets sick or they get sick or they need to go home in an emergency. They don't have any hours banked, is what we would call it, where they have read ahead. So we taught them how to bank hours, just in reading a certain amount, so that when things happened, or just even if they wanted to go out, For example, if they finally got a date.
Finally.
So one of the chapters in my book is you need to know how to manage your time since mom is no longer managing it for you. And that's
It's a problem.
It's a problem.
When you were teaching high school students, was there kind of a clear age where you were starting to see a divide in those students who were grasping time management and those who weren't?
I only taught seniors.
Okay.
So to a college student, they don't know that time is more important than money in college. I mean, because like you said, when you what was that?
Time is so valuable in college.
Can you go over what you were talking about before we started about how you had the college students break down where they spent their time and there was nothing left for studying?
Oh, it's like on the first day. I have a survey for them, and we walk through it in terms of how much time they spend a day on multimedia, watching TV, if they do that anymore. Anything for pleasure, brushing your teeth, going to the bathroom, breakfast.
So now it'd be
walking.
Facebook or Instagram.
Right.
And
I add in for them, because they don't know anything about it, an average walk from the dorm to their classroom. You have to count that in. I mean, if you live far away, that may be 30 minutes, a couple times a day. And so they would add, we did this for a week. And they would add that up, and they would end up with no hours left in the week, and we hadn't even talked about studying yet. We hadn't even opened a book. And so it really is a wake-up call on where you waste your time. So the idea was, where is your time spent, and which of these things would you be willing to cut out, do less of, so that you have time for something else,
right.
like study.
So one of the things I talked about in this book was that you need to spend 4 hours studying before you spend 4 hours in a club. I mean, it just goes back to time management.
We call that guiltless partying.
Yeah. If you
It's
get
a
all
very
your
clinical term.
Yes, that's a
Guiltless
clinical
partying,
term.
yeah.
I learned that my second semester of college.
That my colleague and I, we always called it when we were teaching the program, you want to strive for guiltless partying, because they are going to party. They are going to, and this is something what my high school students liked, is that they could see it from both perspectives. This is what you all do that drive us nuts. This is what we do that drive you nuts. I mean, so they really, I laid it on the line. I cut them. I did not sugarcoat anything, not one thing, in high school. So they would know.
Kids get to college and they can't decide whether to study at 7 o'clock or go clubbing and then come home and study in drunk. The whole time management thing, if you don't know how to manage your time, you're going to fail out. You're absolutely going to fail out. And if your mother has managed your time for you all the way through high school, you're not going to be able to do it yourself. The other thing about time is that I've kind of listed what a typical night of homework would look like. And so for a typical student, review French vocabulary, study 70 pages of international politics for your midterm, read 60 pages of literature, study for humanities midterm, research for science project, and study for science midterm. Is that far off?
No, not at all. And research, that blows them out of the water. They have no idea that you have to start a research paper before the night before.
The success in college is based upon how well you do things that you don't want to do. And when you do things that you don't want to do.
Right.
And so I don't want to do that term paper. I don't want to start it now. And the kids that overcome that reluctance to actually begin are the ones that graduate.
And you're halfway home if you just begin. It's the beginning that's so hard.
Right.
If you can just begin it, you are halfway home.
At the University of Texas, I realized that I didn't go to UT, but I had friends who said, "God, we could have the time of our lives from 7 a.m. to 10 o'clock at night and never step foot in a classroom." Kind of what you were saying. They could be utterly swamped for 14 hours without ever walking into a classroom or cracking a book. So parents take these sheltered, helicoptered kids to college, dump them off, and think that somehow they're going to be suddenly infused with wisdom about time management. And that is where they lack so much that they're home within 3 weeks.
So, Harry, when do you start? When do you start with those skills?
Yeah. How did you get your kids ready for college?
Okay, that's a great question.
Yeah.
So
we'll start with Kristen first, and then we'll do mine. Yeah, she's got the better question. When do you start unpacking that?
we started unpacking that in high school. I mean, our junior high. You start making the kids responsible for their homework and for knowing what their homework is. So many kids come home, and my wife used to tutor middle school kids in terms of just cleaning out their backpack, just knowing what their assignments are that day. And parents would pay her a substantial sum of money every night for kids to come over, and she would take apart their backpack, find lunch from 3 days ago, find tests that were never turned in, homework that was never turned in, papers that had never gotten started. She would find all kinds of stuff. And the kids were smart. They were just goobers. And they didn't learn how to take care of themselves. So my wife was doing it for them for, by the hour, and these kids are going to go to college and have a backpack and not be able to find their homework or find their assignment.
I'm going to jump in here. I don't have a camera or headphones or anything.
This
I'm
is
not
Kathleen
fancy
Denier.
enough.
Oh, hi, Kathleen.
Hi. My daughter's in 3rd grade, Christine, and her father and I are divorced, but we're co-parenting, and we've already started doing the responsibility transfer.
Good.
She needs to figure it out. The teachers listed out very clearly and plainly what their weeks-long homework is. They include everything they need to know, and so I say, what's your Spanish homework? I don't know. Well, that's your responsibility, Julia, not mine. And then that's why her grades started going up, like we discussed on the last podcast, because we started transferring responsibility from us to her this year. And it has done an amazing world of difference. In the last 6 weeks, she got all A's. She did really well.
That's probably relieving to you, right?
Yes, it is. I went through college and had to time manage and all that jazz.
Just giving them chores when they're young. This is your chore. You have to get it done before, each week or whatever it is. Just chores.
There's so many different calendar software out there. To say that right, that should help kids manage their time. Do you think it's better if they do it like on an iPhone and they keep track of their assignments, or a written paper? Sit down. There's a calendar filled out.
I had kids, this is my high school kids, that had their own preference, and I did not interfere with that preference. The problem with the iPhone is that might be great for what time you have to be someplace, but they need something larger where they know, where they can see at a glance every week or every month. I did the calendars in a month. Where your exams fell, where the papers fell, it's very hard to see on an iPhone.
Right.
And those squares get very, very full, because a lot of mine would map out exactly how many pages they had to read. If they have, an exam in psychology over 150 pages, and that comes 3 weeks into the semester, they better be reading so many pages every night, and they actually will lay that out.
Not to mention how easy it is to just flip off the calendar app on an iPhone and pop open any other app. Yeah, of course.
That is a problem.
Yes.
Or lose it. Well, so the first semester of my freshman year, I scored a resounding at a pitiful school. I scored an embarrassing 1-4.
A 1 in 4.
Yeah. I failed typing even. It was like
Did you really?
It was a nosedive.
How do you fail typing?
You're a writer.
I can write, but I can type. And it wasn't fair, because it was not fair, and I'm still bitter to this day, because it was graded on a curve, and sitting right next to me was a secretary. She could do 100 words with her eyes closed a minute. So, regardless, after the nosedive, I moved into a dorm and was forced to buy a calendar, like Christine's talking about, where every day of the month is out there, and I could write assignments on it. And I learned the trick to passing college, and that was like, not only do you go to class, then you make use of that day. So between classes, I would go to the library and read. this was like, I can do this.
This isn't so bad.
This isn't so bad. I can sit indoors in air conditioning and read this.
Without your iPhone. You can never go to the library with an iPhone.
There's a tip. There's a good tip.
Sure.
So I would sit in the library and read, and then I'd go to class, and then I devoted 6 hours to studying every day. I just made that calendar appointment that I would study 6 hours up to 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock, and after that I would have guilt-free partying if I felt like it. But I would do all my homework from Monday on Friday. But these are just things that you learned after you nearly failed out of college that I need to get my act together here.
You know, it's funny. In my school, I thought one of the things I really took advantage of, in the basement of our library at college, there was no cellular service. It just didn't work. It was the greatest. It was perfect. Yeah, you just go down there and it's like, well, can't do anything anyway, so better just hit the books. And it really was nice. And it makes you wonder how successful I would have been had I had that, or how successful Harry would have been if he'd had an iPhone in college. You know, I mean, do you think he'd still be where you are today, or?
I probably would still be in college.
I think part of personal responsibility, I think, is learning to kind of take those toys away from yourself and say, I gotta remove myself for this.
I gotta cut this off. And then there's that's the organization and planning. And I tell the story about my son all the time, how brilliant student, but not organized in the beginning. So he would, the first week of dental school, he studied his butt off on like chapter 3, read it, and went in. The test was on chapter 4.
Oh, rookie mistake.
A rookie mistake. So the whole thing of being able to plan, being able to organize, be able to take care of yourself. I mean, that's a big deal in college when you start getting down to all the papers that are due and all the books you have to read and timetables, and you're making these decisions. Well, that's a hot girl. I kind of maybe like to go meet her.
Yeah, sure.
Or have this paper. And
Harry, you speak on the subject of happiness being the enemy of excellence.
Yes.
And I'm curious to know, like, is there a certain technique or a certain age at which you can start working with a child to help them understand that sometimes you have to do things that you don't always want to do? Because that's a big thing that we're talking about is, you know, you were saying, Christine, that these kids, when they looked at their calendars, they actually physically did not have the time to study. So that means they're going to have to give up something that they enjoy doing or that they want to do over something that they don't necessarily want to do. So how do you approach that?
it starts young. I mean, it literally starts young, kind of like Kathleen was saying. You start telling them that life is not all fun. There's work involved. That's what's called work. There's play and there's work. And there is so many parents want to keep their kids from suffering. And this is the problem. This is what I talk about. Happiness is the enemy of excellence. They would rather their kids be happy, and they would rather go yell at the teacher for assigning too much homework, or they would rather do the homework themselves. They'd rather have a test discount, or they would go pay off a judge. Anything to keep their child happy and not growing up, because growing up is painful.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it takes blood, sweat, and tears to grow up. There's failure involved in growing up. And if we don't let our kids grow up in like middle school, where it's safe, in high school, when the mistakes are not that bad, then they go to college, they've yet to figure out how to plan their day or to find their homework, or their papers are everywhere in their backpack. They don't know where their lunch, their meal card is. They can't find that. They go going hungry. I mean, it's like, didn't we teach you anything? Well, no, you didn't. You didn't teach them a thing. You took care of them. You didn't teach them. You didn't teach them how to survive. And my focus has always been on training kids to succeed in the adult world. And that means being able to take care of yourself. I mean, when you leave high school, there's a lot of kids that walk from there into the military, you know, and it's you want to be able to face the adult world when you're 18, when you leave high school. It's just imperative. Or else if you go to college, you're not going to make it. If you go and try and just get some stupid job, you're not going to make it. You have to be able to face reality, and that's, as a parent, you start having them face reality early. I did. I mean, that's why a parent gets that's why I insisted on my boys' work. That's why I insisted on homework, on them doing it in front of me. Dad, we don't like this. I don't care. As a parent, you can't care about their happiness. You have to care about their long-term excellence. So that's what I mean by happiness leading me to excellence. But excellence produces happiness. You know, there's nothing happier than a kid who's just made an A on a biology test. And when I started making good grades, I was like, I went from a 1.5 student to a straight A student just by studying 6 hours a day and getting organized.
Mm-hmm.
So it's college will break you if you're not ready for it. And I'm afraid that kids 10 years ago, 20 years ago, were more prepared for college than they are today. And that's why we're having so many kids drop out.
Christine, do you think it's more reflective on the parenting or on the schooling, or both? On where the students are kind of lacking these basic skills in terms of time management and life skills?
I think a lot of it is, at least in public school, Dallas. Are we allowed to say that?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And Dallas
Sure.
is not real high up there in the cities for where their schools rank. And I think I see some of it just continuing to lower the standard in order to accommodate everybody. We used to have in the old days remedial classes for kids even in high school and elementary school. All of those, everybody's mainstream now, and you have to come down to the lowest common denominator. As a teacher, it's very difficult not to come down to that because you get so much flack. If a kid doesn't pass,
Mm-hmm.
and it makes a lot of work on everybody. If I have to keep giving a test until the kid passes 5 or 6 times and have to keep tutoring him day in and day out, that's taking a lot more time.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's very easy to come down to the lowest common denominator. They want everybody to pass.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't, they pass them anyway.
There was
I've seen grades changed.
there was a story
Many times.
on Channel 8 about a girl who graduated #1 from Sunset or a lower ranked high school.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and because she graduated #1, she got a scholarship to University of Texas at Dallas, and she was dying there. I mean, she was absolutely failing out,
Mm-hmm.
and she couldn't understand how she had finished #1 in high school and hadn't passed a test yet, the
Mhm.
UTD. And I don't think she ever did. I mean, I don't think she lasted the semester. But this is what, if we're not training our kids in high school to face college, they're not going to be able to face college. And there's so many things when a kid walks into, imagine you're 18, you don't know anybody, you don't know anything, your parents have taken care of you, and you walk onto a college campus, and they dump you off, here you are. What's the first thing you do? I mean, how do you handle registration? And you're kind of bashful, and there's all these people saying, join my club and do this, and you're going, man, I just want to go to my room and watch TV. But the first 2 weeks can determine your next 4 years.
To determine your future.
Yeah, those first 2 weeks of college are everything. That's where you get the classes that are right. That's where you get the professors that you need. That's where you meet people. One of the reasons kids come home is they don't know anybody. They get lonely. They get depressed. They sit in their apartment or sit in their dorm and freak out. They don't know anybody. So the first 2 weeks, that's when everybody's the same. You need to go out there. You need to join clubs. You need to join everything you can. Go to all the student functions you can. Meet all the people you can. So you'll know people. And that was one of the great things of what you were doing was those 30 kids knew each other.
Mm-hmm. And the first day of classes, they were so savvy. They knew where all the buildings were. The first thing I made them do when they come, I gave them a campus map, and I said, here are your 4 syllabi. You go find every classroom, every building, every classroom. And they learned that they knew their way around campus and a lot of people.
And that's so smart because a lot of kids can't. Where is English?
Right.
What is the Stadford building? What's that about?
Where's that?
And I remember wandering around SMU for like a week trying to figure out where in the world is Dallas Hall? I thought that was an auditorium. You have to learn your way around campus. You have to come to college with a plan that you're going to meet people, you're going to be organized, you're going to you're going to take the classes. You're not going to shirk off and try to take 9 hours. I mean, you got to pony up, and I'm going to do 12 to 15 hours, especially if you're going to try and graduate in 4 years, which if your parents are paying for it, God almighty, they want you to graduate in 2. But taking 15 hours of the classes you need, going to meet the professors. I mean, that's so many kids are afraid to go meet the professors.
I encourage them to come meet me.
Yeah, yeah. You either that or you're just a name on a roster, and knowing the professor. I mean, you're sitting there. Maybe you've made a 79.5 or 69.5, and is that a C or D? Is that a B or C? Depending on what the professor thinks of you, they could give you the half point.
Harry, wouldn't you agree that it's important to also maintain humility and understand that if you're spooked, if you're scared of college, of not knowing what to do or where things are, how to deal with financial aid, odds are a lot of other kids are too, and that's okay.
Well, absolutely, and that's the point about meeting other kids.
Yeah.
That's the point about how you have to have a base in college of friends that you can turn to and go, what in the world am I doing? Even a lot of kids join sororities and fraternities, a lot don't. That's cool, but whatever you do, you need a base of friends that you can confide in and talk to and know. There's nothing like walking across the campus saying 4 or 5 people that you say hi to because you know them, that makes you feel at home. And one of the reasons kids transfer out is that they don't know anybody.
Right.
Like the closer you live to campus in your early years, the better your grades are. There's a direct correlation between how close you live to campus and how high your grades are the first 2 years. There's a direct correlation. The further you get away from campus, the further away you get from the whole college experience, and the less you care. So, anyway, are we about out of time?
We're just about out of time. Believe it or not, I know.
That went quick.
It's always over so fast. Just like college.
I want to thank Christine. We just grazed this subject on college. We just touch and go. I hope the one thing I want parents to learn is this is a great book, 1001 Things Every College Student Needs to Know.
You left out one thing.
Tell me. Uh-oh.
Napping is the kiss of death. First thing I tell the students, when you nap during the day, you'll be wide awake to party all night, and then you'll sleep in the next day. So keep that. This is your mantra. Napping is the kiss of death.
Daddy's on your napping. No, I don't have time. That's homework time.
Don't do it.
So, Christine, thank you so much for being
You're
here.
welcome.
We're
I
going to
enjoyed
bring you back for another show. And Kristen, thank you.
Thank you.
Zach, thank you for your contributions.
Thanks.
And we will see you next time. Thanks.
Guiltless Parenting is a production of the Real News Communications Network in collaboration with Harry H. Harrison Jr. This episode was recorded and edited by Matt Stoker and myself, Zach Lewis. Production music courtesy of the Audio Jungle Music Library. To find out more about Harry and his work, or to purchase one of his books, visit www.fearlessparenting.com.
You're listening to RNCN, the digital destination for premium talk radio.